Welcome to the Wednesday, April 19th special call meeting of the City of Tullahoma Planning Commission. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Determination of a quorum. We have 5 present. Absent are Ms. Amacher and Mr. Rice. So with 5 present, that is a quorum. At this time, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, since this is a special call meeting, we have one thing on the agenda tonight, and that's the comprehensive plan amendment. And I believe that this is a public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing now, but I believe that the Tullahoma, what's the name of the board? The board that was put forth to put this together has a presentation, and I'm not sure which one of you actually chairs it, so thank you.
Thank you, Chuck Dean, and I'm one of the members of the Community Plan Development Committee, or the CPDC, because we always forget what it's called too.
All right, thank you.
So I'd like to introduce the members of the committee that are here with me as well tonight. Have Ron Darden over here, and we have Nancy Cheney, and we have Jamie Moorhead over here, and Elizabeth Bowling, as well as Greg Gressel are also on the committee, and they're not here this evening. So we, the CPDC, are presenting this revised 2011 Tullahoma Comprehensive Plan to the Planning Commission for review and consideration. This revision is meant to act as a bridge to a finalized long-term plan, which is projected to be completed no later than 2025. The CPDC has worked through the recommended revisions of the 2011 plan in association with input from the planning director of the City of Tullahoma, Mary Samaniego, and the liaison from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, Kurt Glick. We've had very good cooperation from both Ms. Samaniego and Mr. Glick, and our group has gotten along very well. We've come to good consensus on the things that were being presented to you tonight. And the revision is functional in nature, and it's meant to assist the city with items or issues which may arise in the near term, which may include, but are not limited to, economic development, housing, transportation, and a variety of land issues. To that end, most of the statistics and data from the 2011 plan have not been updated. And at this point, we leave any detailed review of the plan to be addressed by Ms. Samaniego. And thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dean. All right. This is a public forum, so anyone from the public that wishes to come forward and speak on the plan, please do so now. All right. I will now close. I'm sorry, it's a public hearing, but I will now close the public hearing, and I will turn it over to Ms. Samaniego for a staff report.
Thank you. Mary Samaniego for the record. I provided you all with my staff report. I think Mr. Dean explained kind of the process pretty well. We'll just dive right into it. You've had the draft plan for, I think, a month or so now. I also have provided you in your packet the community plan development recommended changes. So let me back up a moment. So the draft plan went out. We gave the public 30 days to review and comment. Those comments were due, I believe, on the 8th, and those are in your packet as well. So every public comment we received is for your review. After the 8th, the Community Plan Development Committee met one more time, reviews those comments, and based on those comments, recommended further changes that, again, are in your packet. Primarily to add a purpose statement to the executive summary that kind of explains the purpose of this 2011 plan as a revision to the original plan, but a stepping stone to the larger long-range plan of 2025. And then also was inserted some language into one of the economic development goals submitted by a resident. That resident has requested that that language be further revised as well. So when we get to that, we can discuss that topic. But other than that, we're ready to proceed. I don't know, sir, how you want to proceed with this. Do you want to go page by page like we did before, or?
Yes, I mean, it's not that in-depth. Let's just go page by page, and the board can ask questions, and if we need to be, and if we have any questions for the developing committee, the Community Plan Development Committee, we will ask that of them. So, all right. With that, we'll start with page 2.
Yes, page 2 is just update of the interested parties, as it were. Page 3 is throughout this document, you'll see a lot of grammatical changes that I'm not going to impress at this point. It's like ampersands, replaced with ands, little typos, punctuations, things that are cleaned up in that, be sure.
Okay. I do have a comment about page 2. So the names on this plan were developed by the names that were mentioned and redlined. I believe that needs to be captured in this document, because at the revision of this will go away. So I would like to see at least an appendix that has the original cover page in it in reference to it.
Wait, I'm confused. Why do you need that?
To document the names that are the preparers of this document.
But this will be a whole new plan. I mean, I realize it's a revision, but I guess I'm not following. Because, okay, prior to the 2011 plan, could I get a little background going back? Because I don't know. Prior to the 2011 plan, did we have a comp plan prior to 2011? And when was it?
I believe it was from 1996. We've had comprehensive plans in the city since 1968.
Sure. So, I mean, I thought it was pretty well that you always have one. The only reason I question that is because in this plan, I don't see a record back to 1996.
Was that a revision?
Was it a revision? I guess that's not.
It was a whole new
No,
plan.
this was a whole new plan.
Yeah.
This was done by MCAS, because this was a whole new plan.
Okay. I mean, I'm just curious, like, is this a new plan or a revised plan? I mean, how are we, I guess we're revising this one until we do a new plan. Is that why we're doing that?
Yes.
Okay. Was this their recommendation or just yours?
This is my recommendation.
Okay. All right.
I would like to capture the original preparation of the people of this document, and I believe that can be done. I also, to Ms. Almacher's point, I would also like to see maybe a change log as before the table of contents. I think that's appropriate for revising documents.
I changed a lot. I can explain that.
A change log of any major changes captured in the front of this document.
This one? Okay.
If we're going to put I guess the reason I was asking is why would you, the old names to me, I almost thought you were talking about the CPDC. The names that I think really ought to be in here are the names of the members that contributed to this. And that's recognition going out to, the CPDC. Is there a way
Microphone.
sorry. The CPDC, I would think that they would need to maybe be mentioned, since they are the body that we created that did the revisions.
I would agree with that, somewhere in here. I know that you put the governing bodies in the planning commission, right, but maybe like a credit to, I'm kind of with you on the revision piece. I know that we're not going to go through here tonight and change a lot of this, and there's probably a lot more that I'd like to dump of this, and I would rather, if we're going to put our names on it and get credit, I would like, or blame, credit, blame, whichever, right? When people look back in history, I'm okay with them saying, these are the people who originally did it. These were the people who revised these things in it. Since it's not our plan. Is there an argument against why? Is there a reason why not to do that?
No, I was just curious as to what the why was.
That's
No,
my why.
I'm okay with that. I
don't want credit for a plan that's not mine.
I think that the original names are fine to leave in there so long as, I mean, if we show the progression, that's fine, but we don't need to leave out the body that actually made the changes.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually captured in their addendum to the executive summary, but it is not. It's just a few of it. It's just Mr. Glick and Mary Samaniego. So wherever that seems appropriate, I'm fine with that. But yeah, I agree with that as well. Anyway.
Agreed.
I think it would be appropriate to make motions on all the changes.
Okay.
Keep it tight.
All right. Well,
I will make a motion that we keep the original names in here. Is one motion. Probably need them separate, right? Instead of grouping them together, or do you want them together? And then we also add a section acknowledging the
CPD.
the group of people that contributed
Community Plan Development Committee.
and steered this.
Second, if you're done.
I'm done, I think.
I'll do discussion on that. One of the other things I think is appropriate is the change log.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Can we,
Yeah, motion per page would be clear.
yeah. Yeah, so the motion for page 2
For motion for page 2.
is to include the,
Keep the existing acknowledgements
yeah,
and include the, what is
The
it?
CPDC
CPDC. Include the names of the CPDC
and add a change log.
yes.
and add a change log. We've got the red line, right? Do we need a change log if we've got the red line that will keep the revision history in there?
Yeah,
The red line won't be the printed document.
Right, but we'll always have,
change log,
Then they can
red
just
lines
look
can
through.
go away, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean,
and include a change log.
Yeah.
for example, the change log is, let me find one that's actually just been omitted or something.
Sorry, Mary.
But, if you, section whatever, is, section 373126 omitted, something like that. And then, but nothing extravagant.
And add a change log.
Okay, so the motion is, did you get the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, vote on that. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's abstained? Okay. All right. All right, Mary, back to you.
Thank you. The next change is on page 13 of the actual plan. Under the population information, the committee wanted to specify that the population projection numbers were based as of 2011, not that those aren't population projections as of 2023.
My question here is, figure out how to word it. That data is in here, in Appendix C. Why would we not just update that paragraph to make it current? Or at least write it in past tense and say we have seen, and we've seen a 4% growth, 18,612 to 26,665. And so,
I would say that the reason is the plan itself is not actually based on the 20, we're just making revisions to a plan that's based on the projected 2011, right?
So the new data would go into the new plan.
Into the next plan versus,
I agree with that.
is that assumption correct?
okay, that's reasonable.
To answer your question, in Appendix A, under community profile, where all the demographics actually are, they wanted to add it as of 2011. And then the original motion for this committee and how this plan was being revised stated that the demographic information for the 2040 plan was to be included. So that is actually in Appendix 6, or C.
See, yes.
Demographics as of 2022.
Yeah. Okay.
So the changes on page 13.
Any other comments on 13 or previous?
Yeah, I guess I was, I was thinking along the lines of that we were changing this document to be as if it was a 2023 plan now, but we're not. We're just saying that we're just
Necessary updates, I think, is
changing
the
some
point.
things so that and some
Yeah.
other things will point to the demographics like that we're talking about. The reason because I was Beverly Lee had a lot of comments about changing things to update that I thought were very well thought out. But if we're going to leave it like it's written, like it's 2011, and only add certain information, then I'm not going to worry about that, because I saw some of the comments she made was pretty well, like talking about things that the stuff that are in here now, today versus what's in this document don't really match.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the original motion at the Board of Mayor and Aldermen was that we would have a new plan by 2025, and this would be just kind of like a stopgap in between that time period.
So
and
a lot of the wording we don't have to worry about, since it's just, I got you, that's...
Right, and so we can use that information, and the CPDC will also be helping with the, developing the new plan.
All right.
I don't think that it's a terrible idea to include some of that, or maybe some other things, because there's a lot that's happening between 2020.
Comment about TUA.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are happening between 2023 and 2025, and I believe this will be used as people looking at our city to come here and develop, and we'll use it in grants probably and things like that. So it may, Mary.
I just want to make sure that it was clear that this project was a board-initiated project, and they had a very limited scope of what was to be looked at.
Which was to update it to...
There were three things. To change the map based on the draft of the 2040 plan, to correct typos and inconsistencies, and I think to have the demographic information. I think those were the three things that they were to do.
Okay.
That's it.
And so there's no changes in here at all that is not one of those three things?
Correct. For the most, do you want to correct me? Go ahead.
Mr. Dean, you're recognized.
We'll get to some things. There is some verbiage that's been changed in assorted areas there. But the main thing is, yes, in working with Mary in particular, I know that she brought up the other night at her meeting an issue of trying to kind of sync up the area use map with the verbiage that's in the 2011 plan, so that she can take care of 50 some odd people with non-conforming properties at this point. And so that was part of our emphasis. And then there were some things, some verbiage that we have tightened up in there that's not necessarily one of those three. But as we went through things, there were things we thought as a group would be appropriate to do in that way. So, and we did not try to do all the statistics, because we just, we don't think it's really necessary for the purpose that we had here. And we are already diligently working on the longer term plan that hopefully will be done well within the time frame of 2025. And so that's what we'll be looking at specifically. And you mentioned Ms. Lee and some of her comments, and we did review all those, and nobody had any real problems with them. It's just some of those things were in the 2040 plan, and we're going through that thoroughly. We're not there yet, and if we start cherry picking pet projects to do in this, it'll just never happen.
Right.
So we're trying to put that in the longer scheme of things. So hopefully that helps explain it.
But you made a good point, because that was my question, is those properties that kind of got auto rezoned, that was addressed in this, so that the non-conforming, the ones that can't update their properties.
Mary can speak to that better.
Okay.
Yes, if this land use map gets adopted, then that will enable the rezoning of those properties, because then the rezoning back to primarily residential zoning districts would be compatible with this map.
Okay.
And that's the main criteria for
So if you
rezoning.
combine the land use map and the document you're going through are kind of go hand in hand.
Right.
together.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
So to that point, Mayor, you
Yes,
verified
there
that
were things
those,
in order to, yes, so is demographics, cleaning it up, and then the map. But in order for the map to make sense and not have gross inconsistencies between the text and the map, we had to do some tweaking, which I'll go through. As an example, segueing to page 15, the land use designation and zoning district compatibility table. There are two existing zoning districts that were never incorporated into this plan because they came after the adoption of this plan, and this plan was never then subsequently revised to add the new zoning districts into them. Those zoning districts being C3 and R1A. So we have corrected that within the table. And then through discussion with the committee, it was determined that the way that the R1, R2, R3, R4 compatibility matrix was actually backwards than how it should be. Meaning under the existing 2011 plan, it was saying that in the low-density residential that it was appropriate to be R1, R2, R3, or R4. But in the high-density residential, you could only do R4, which is actually the opposite in that. So that's been corrected. That in the low-density residential, the appropriate districts would only be agricultural, R1A, and R1. And that because of the description intent of the low-density residential, rezoning to R2, R3, or 4 wouldn't be compatible. Do you have any questions on the page 15?
I think we do.
Yeah, so we're taking out and I'm okay with this, I'm just making sure I'm reading it right. We're taking out the high-density multifamily, is that crossed out in place of?
It was in there, yeah, because if you look directly below it, there's high-density.
Mobile homes?
Yeah, it's the same.
Is a mobile home the same as a multifamily?
No, it's a different use, but it's the same areas were designated within the map.
Okay.
Multifamily would fall under high density, right?
Right.
When did we establish R1A?
R1A was established maybe 5 years ago. So the city adopted zoning regulations and created a new zoning district, R1A, which has a 2-acre minimum lot size. And then, but no properties were ever rezoned to that district.
See, I'm not going to go, I don't want to go off on a rabbit trail, but there's something that I think that would be prudent of us to research. R1 and agricultural have different protections when it comes to state laws. And so I'm kind of like you're putting together apples and oranges, and I'm not sure that, for instance, you can enforce the R1 provisions on agricultural lands. And so I realize that was pre-established, but if we need to correct this, then is this the time to maybe look at that? Because there are things that we can't, I mean, we've had that discussion concerning, your
property,
my property even, because the county has it designated agricultural, the city has it designated R1, but there are certain things that you can enforce in R1 that you can't enforce on agricultural lands per state laws that protects agricultural lands.
Right. I hear what you're saying, and we've discussed this before. Again, we're talking about the agricultural zoning district. We're not talking about agricultural use of the property. So the city has had an agricultural zoning district for decades. So there's kind of, it's apples and oranges. There's the use of the property. So you can have an agricultural use on your property, like your family's farm off Old Ethel Springs Road. That's an agricultural use of the property for taxation purposes, but it's actually zoned I-1 industrial. So it's a separate issue. Right.
But, I mean, I see what you're saying, and again, go back to like a R1 agricultural, because that's what this is, R1A.
R1A is R1 alternative, so it's low-density
Okay.
residential alternative, which is a larger lot size that they wanted to create.
Yeah, that zoning exists, does it not? If there's just no property that is zoned
Right,
that?
that was, I think the catalyst was, for that was a property owner had property on Ledford Mill, and he wanted to create larger lots by right, and there's been discussion, as I think a lot of you know, over many, many years in Tullahoma about trying to create a zoning district with a larger minimum lot size. So that's why R1A was created. However, no property has actually been rezoned to it.
Yeah, but it exists in our zoning.
But it
code.
exists in our zoning code now, right.
And now you have it on the map. So now there's a,
So now it's in
Specific.
the table, so now the table will say when and if anybody wants to, or the city wants to do a city-initiated rezoning to R1A, according to the compatibility table, it would only be consistent or compatible in the low-density residential land use category.
Oh, I'm misreading the table. I am sorry.
Okay.
I thought that the R1A was struck out.
No, underline is new, struck out is,
I got you. The table makes it, so, and the red boxes are the
Yeah,
accepted uses, okay.
yes.
I was reading that as redacted, but the X's are redacted.
yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
where it gets confusing is like, if I want to repair a barn, and you guys have me zoned R1, but my use is agricultural,
Right.
the R1 would make me subject to many things that agricultural would not, and I would be protected by state law. So I get what you're saying in the land use and the difference, but it still does cross over. And the reason that that law was made was to protect,
Right.
against, somebody saying you got to pull a building permit to do X, Y, and Z when you're just trying to repair a barn or something like that. And when we're getting into these larger lot sizes and we're looking at places like Anderson Farm, should there be, or that property, for example, or these larger tracts that still exist, should
Right.
there be a separate land use designation? I'm just curious if that was something that was talked about,
It wasn't talked about with this group. It
but
was.
maybe for the future.
It was something that, it was something that was discussed in the 2040 plan process, but nobody ever recommended that as a change.
Yeah, I think we actually
Okay.
removed it, yeah. Okay. I have a couple comments if nobody else does on this table. There's an inconsistency later on. I went back to this table, and maybe we just wait till it gets there, but we have, somewhere in here, it says that mobile homes should be in an R2 zone. And while they're there, I'm not sure what R4 is. Mobile homes?
Yes, R4 is the mobile home park zoning district.
So,
So it allows for mobile home parks, multifamily residential. Our residential zoning districts are a pyramid zoning, they call it. So R1 is only single family, R2 is duplexes and single family, R3 is townhomes, multifamily, duplexes and single family, and then R4 is mobile home park, multifamily, townhomes, duplexes and houses, single family. So you can only have a mobile home park in R4, long story short.
okay.
So you said that there's a reference within this plan that says mobile home parks should be on R2?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
It's in my notes.
Okay. I'll wait.
One other comment before we get too far along. The as projected in 4.3, the as projected in 2011, I think we need to do a scrub to make sure, like, there's another thing about, there's a stat here in 3.6 about vacant land, some accounting for some 42% of the land. That also needs to say 20 as projected in 2011 or as
What page are you on, sir?
12, section 3.6.
12.
Sorry. I didn't get to get it in before we moved on, so.
I can't see what, yeah. On page 12,
Section 3.6, accounting for some 42% of the land, like,
okay, per 2011.
I think that there needs
As
to be
projected in
a
2011.
reasonable scrub to make sure that, like,
Yeah.
any data
Okay,
that are published
okay.
or needs to be referenced to that.
Makes sense.
All right. Oh, also, I had a note about, can we actually specify what the zoning needs to be in the UGB? Because that's the county and not the city.
I thought it was odd that was in here as well, but
Okay.
we left it, yeah. I mean, yeah, I won't go further into that.
As long as you recognize that
Correct.
I'll yield.
I think that provides some guidance when properties are annexed. What the intent is that they should be primarily large lot residential, but not necessarily so.
Any other questions from?
Is that the 6.2? Isn't that what addresses that? Moderate density development?
6.2.
Page 19. Or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, should be loaded. But I mean, there could be instances, I don't want to go sideways on this, but there could be instances where, say, somebody has property on South Jackson and they want to annex to have sewer because they want to put in a commercial use. Well, obviously, we could probably rezone that to commercial, so it's not always, every property that's annexed won't always be for purely single-family residential potentially.
We're talking about, I thought you were talking about UGB.
Yeah, I
This too is talking about urban. Which is different from UGB.
Well, that was my question, is does it correlate to that map since it's on the previous page?
Correlate with UGB?
Yeah, well.
Urban
you got
area
the map-
is a completely different, that's like your downtown business.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm saying is it, the reason that that's on page 18 and this is on page 19 is that areas in the UGB would be also considered moderate density development. I guess, since you have that map and then you have that section right after that, I understand what it says, but is that also kind of alluding back to that's an expectation, I guess is?
I would think that would be rural area,
Right.
not urban
Yeah,
area.
typically the GGB area would be classified as rural area, which is 6.1.
Well, it's rural until it gets annexed in, and then most of the time,
It's still not
Well,
going
we
to be urban. Sorry.
We have a whole, 6.1 addresses a whole rural area of the existing city limits. So the 2011 plan recognized that on the outskirts of town, but still within town, it's under this rural area category. One of the difficulties we had with this plan is that there is no map that goes along with these categories. So there's no map really indicating where the rural areas are, where the urban areas are, where the inner city is. So that was a little cumbersome, but
Yeah, that
in
is
my educated knowledge,
confusing.
I would think that the outskirts of town, because this plan only covers
There's
the
not,
town, that it would be on the,
as you say, there's nothing in there that defines what the rural area is.
correct. I mean, there's text.
There's text, but
Including
still
undeveloped portions
none
of
of the maps
Tullahoma.
identify the difference between
Right, there's
rural
no
and
map.
urban area.
No. So it
Or
says
even the other areas defined in that section.
Yeah, so it just says rural areas include
And,
the undeveloped portions of Tullahoma,
Yeah.
which have moderate development limitations along with developable land well suited for agricultural.
And that causes some difficulty in understanding.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it causes difficulty trying to do a staff report for a reason, and when you have these different categories, but you're not sure where the lines fall.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Mary. Back to you, page 16.
16, 17, no changes, no changes, no changes. Page 21 was another substantive change. This was a change that we did make through the committee. Again, trying to make sure that the text of the map made some sense with, the text of the plan made sense with the map. In the 2011 plan, there was all this discussion about limiting linear development, that the only place to have linear development was to be on North Jackson Street. It says, quote, "New and improved major collector and arterial shall be designated to discourage high-density land uses along them. So yeah, there was a lot of language in here, including this that says to focus it just in this one area. However, if you look at the existing development pattern of Tullahoma, there's linear development all over the place. There's North Jackson, South Jackson, Anderson, Carroll, both Lincolns. So, and the map reflects that because again, the future land use map is trying to acknowledge the existing development pattern. So we have a commercial and industrial land use designations on Atlantic, Washington, Jackson, South Jackson, Anderson. All those are linear developments, so it doesn't make any common sense to have a policy that says we're limiting linear development when we're clearly showing that we're encouraging it. So that whole section was struck.
I agree with that. I think the point of that was just going back so that everybody can understand. If you analyze something like the Terra Estates in Macon Manor and that large subdivision that was proposed behind it, then one of the biggest problems that the citizens had was that it would cut through their neighborhoods rather than focusing on the linear development. And I think with that, we also said that we wanted to maintain that larger development projects needed to be connected to major thoroughfares. So it's kind of the opposite of that. So, and I think that's still the focus going forward, based on all the feedback we've gotten from the citizens. Larger developments, connect them to be as close to major thoroughfares as possible and not run through neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood.
So
I had some problem with that linear development being struck in the fact that one of the objectives of this particular section is to first define what all of these things are, which that does in the very beginning. It defines what linear development is. But then it gets down and it says that administrative policies will provide incentives to create development centers rather than linear development. Now, I can see where they may have wanted to strike that sentence out, but to me, it didn't seem proper to strike the whole paragraph, because later on in the document, you're talking about linear development, and this is the place where linear development is defined.
Linear development should be looked at with a negative light and should be discouraged if we don't like traffic and car-centric and waiting in school lines and stuff like that. The farther we sprawl out, the more we're increasing traffic. And that should be a theme of what we're trying to do, is improve the transportation model of the city. And that seems that seems the opposite of what we're trying to do with this plan.
But it's not. Based on the feedback, and the reason that 2040 failed is exactly what you're saying, is because we don't want, we want those major thoroughfares and we want larger developments. The subdivisions, we would like them to be uniquely away from, your local gas station and not have a gas station right in the middle. And I mean, you can call that sprawl if you want to. We're a small enough area with not a ton of land left to develop, so I don't think there is such thing as sprawl in Tullahoma right now. But this was what is so funny. I mean, I feel like that's really disrespectful for both the planning director and you to be laughing. I mean, this is me trying to think out loud and have a discussion. You should have more respect for me than that. I'm sick of it. Please stop.
It's funny that you said there's no sprawl in Tullahoma. I apologize for laughing.
I mean, it's disrespectful.
It may be. I'll take that.
Right.
I
Understand.
wasn't laughing. I smiled because he started laughing.
It's disrespectful. Please don't do that.
I just smiled.
You were laughing, and it's...
Ms. Almacher. Understood. Anyway, it is... Tullahoma is, we have, in my opinion, nothing but sprawl. But that's an opinion. But the more we grow, and as long as we recognize that the sprawl and going out in the linear development is a non-sustainable growth pattern and if we're trying to keep taxes down, if we're trying to keep traffic limited, sprawl is expensive. It is not sustainable. It is not.
I think it does just the opposite, but that's I think the feedback is that we don't want to over-concentrate and have progressive urbanization, in essence, and concentrate large developments in a small area. The citizens here, one reason that many people move to...
Mr. Berry.
I understand that. There are always going to be people that disagree with this, but I think the majority of citizens, with their opposal, with there being so much opposition to 2040, I think the main point of that was that they did not want to grow too quickly or be too urbanized. We didn't want to become Laverne or Murfreesboro or, a big city in a small space. And I think that what you're talking about is just the opposite, and that was the whole pushback to 2040. So I think it's important that this board recognize that was the feedback and why the plan failed to begin with.
I mean, that's fine. This board can recognize that, but we also need to recognize that sprawl it increases traffic, it increases taxes, and it's expensive. If we want to be expensive and have traffic, sprawl.
I would need to see
loads of research that supports that claim.
There's also loads of research that support the opposite. I mean, and I think it's what we want, what the citizens, want Tullahoma to look like, hence 2040, and that would require change and going away from how we're currently set up, and I don't think people want that kind of change. But I understand your point and why you think that, and the research that you've done. But there's also research that say just the opposite. If we became that, we would not have the charm that we have right now.
I mean, charm is expensive. Then that's okay. Mr. Berry.
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying here. I agree with you. If that's what the citizens want, then that's what the citizens want, right? I don't think you're saying let's do non-sprawl. I think you're saying that, if that's what we want, we just need to understand that that's the trade-off, is if you want to keep it open. I mean, you can go talk to TUA. It costs them the exact same amount of money to run what they need to run and maintain what they need to maintain, whether there's one house on there or two houses on there. It costs the city the exact same money in maintenance and to run roads. If it's a mile stretch of road, whether there's one house on there, whether there's two houses on there. So the cost doesn't go, the fewer homes, the fewer things you have in that area, the cost rises. And so if that's what we want to do, that's okay. That's fine. I don't think anybody's saying I may disagree, but if that's what we want, that's what we're here to do. Let's do that. But we just need to understand it is going to cost more money down the road, and that burden is going to fall on the fewer, which is fine, just as long as you understand that. It's math.
Karen?
Mr. Sellers.
What do we open ourselves up to if we don't delete this, or if we keep it or not? What does that mean to the plan?
Are you asking my?
Yes,
okay.
please.
Just want to make sure. Then it could be if you have a rezoning that is potentially turned down or approved, it could open you up for liability because you're showing policy direction that says, there's a policy statement that says new and improved road collection shall be discouraged from linear development, but then you have a map that's showing the opposite of that.
Okay.
So that in and of itself could be.
Mr. Glick, you're right. I'm sorry. Let Mary finish.
No.
Just trying to get in line.
I thought you were done. I apologize, Mary.
I was done. It's fine.
Okay. Mr. Glick.
I just wanted to interject here. I think there's been a couple of attempts by Mary and Mr. Dean to explain what we were trying to do on this interim plan, as I called it. We were trying to make some small changes to the 2011 plan and mostly to make sure that the maps and the text matched. And it was something that the planning department would be useful to them to get through like 2 years, because we're planning on having the long-range comprehensive plan done by 2025. So this was what I deemed as an interim plan and just correct some mistakes that were causing some problems with the 2011 plan, because I think it was a pretty good consensus that there were some problems in that. So we tried to make those small corrections, make sure the text and the maps matched, and Mary worked very hard on this to make sure it was a good document that the planning department could use to get them through 2 years. So I realize, and I think the discussion kind of we're having here would be a discussion that we would be having when we bring back a new 20-year comprehensive plan. This is a 2-year plan, basically, is what it's supposed to be for, I think. So with that said, I'll leave it to you, but I just didn't know if we were understanding kind of what we were going for, but that's the way I understood it anyway. So.
Understood, and thank you. But, kind of my point of that is essentially, the map may show that we're doing linear development or whatever. Do we want to do more, or do we want to discourage that? I would think we'd want to discourage that, but that's all right. I think we beat that to death, unless anybody else has anything else about it.
Make a motion that we delete this section as requested by the.
Do we need to?
I don't think we have to make a motion for
right?
that.
If we're going to leave it
back
like
in, then we can.
yeah, I think we're okay.
All right, thank you, Mary. Moving on.
You're welcome, moving on. Page 24, 7.1.1.1.3 was deleted just because it got too wordy. These issues were covered under 7.1.1.1 and point 2, point 4, and point 5. They designated all these different types of land use categories, and it just became too wordy. So the committee agreed to strike it.
Which page
It was
you
all
on?
saying the same thing over and over and over again. Page 24.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments on these pages? I have a comment here, but
Okay.
Bringing up at the previous discussion, 7.1.1.1.10 now is
New dot.
the new one. Yeah.
New dot 10. Okay.
New dot 10 is in conflict with removal of 6.7 on the previous page.
Only commercial uses requiring high accessibility or otherwise unsuited to cluster type development should be encouraged to locate in a linear fashion.
Do we remove the?
No, because that's
in line with it.
That is in line with it.
Because we want to keep linear.
Okay.
I would say that is in line with it.
It would have been in opposition to it, actually, previously.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. No, I mean, that's why we're here to ask questions. Page 25, the new 7 point, I'm not going to do all the 7s. Number 11 on page 25, to further refine that mixed-use areas where you incorporate residential and non-residential areas. It just said within urban areas, and again, as we stated earlier in this meeting, there's no map that designates where the urban areas are. So we defined it as further clarifying, rather, along urban principal arterial roadways as classified in the Tullahoma Comprehensive Transportation Plan. So just add more specificity of where mixed-use developments would be appropriate to occur.
That's saying it's only along our major highways, 55 and
Principal arterials.
41. Is that true?
Yes. For large mixed use where it's residential and non-residential in one and large big plan development.
The only place we've got it is along
Principal arterial
41
roadways.
and 55.
That's what this is saying.
I know that's what it's saying, but is that true?
Is that true? I don't understand what you're saying.
Do we have mixed-use areas that are not?
We don't have any mixed use projects in the city. We don't have any mixed-use plan developments now.
Okay.
I
If you
don't,
think about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't have any mixed-use projects now, so they're saying that if we were to have mixed-use areas, providing for the integration of residential and non-residential uses, keep it permitted in appropriate locations within urban areas and then along urban principal arterials.
But we do have areas that are mixed with manufacturing, light industrial, residential, and those kinds of things. For example, along Washington Street.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yes, that is a mixed-use area. This is referring to a mixed-use project that comes in as one whole new project.
But it says mixed-use areas, and that's what got me thinking along the lines of mixtures, areas where you had a mixture of those zoning districts. And it's not just along those major arterial.
Right, no, I hear you. Those are areas that have a mixture of uses.
Yeah.
In a planning context, because they are saying mixed-use areas providing the integration of residential, non-residential uses.
Well, would it be-
I read that to read as a singular project, like a big plan.
Would it be better to put another word besides area in there, for example, project, to make it more clear that you're talking about that rather than just what I was talking about, like along Washington Street?
Right. Yeah, that would further clarify it. That's good.
so I agree with Mr. Comer. I don't necessarily think it's appropriate to just limit it to, I mean, literally just essentially the two highways that run through town. I think we're looking at things out Cedar Lane that may have potential to have mixed use. I don't think that's consistent with the map, but I mean, in general, it's, I mean.
Well, if you make it clear you're talking about a mixed-use project per se, I don't have any problem with it. But if you just say mixed-use areas, I think we're violating it all over the place.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
But I mean.
So you could make a motion to change areas to projects, and then further, you can discuss whether or not you would think it's appropriate to have mixed-use projects on just urban arterials, or you can do secondary arterials or collectors, or that's something that you have the power to.
I don't know that there's much land along those highways to do mixed-use projects. Maybe on South 41A.
Yeah, there's plenty if you do linear development, and then you can't get to school because we don't have buses. Pick your poison.
Was that a question, Mr. Conway, to me?
What? No.
Were you asking me a question of where the properties were? Oh, okay.
Would this, as written, prevent, I forget who said it, so say in Cedar Lane, I know that is a prime kind of area over by the airport and where corporate offices are. Would this prevent somebody from doing, say, a multi-use project where maybe they have residences with a cafe built in, or a restaurant, as people build corporate offices so they can walk? And would this prevent something in the Cedar Lane area from happening like that?
Yes, it would prevent something in Cedar Lane area from coming in where it's like there's a phase of commercial up front, and then there's townhomes, and there's also single family to prevent that. It wouldn't, it's again, non-residential and residential mixing. So Cedar Lane is not a principal arterial, so this wouldn't.
And isn't that kind of what those are things that we want in that area, right? Over by the airport. And the industrial is to lure in more ascends and to lure in more.
Who determines principal arterial? Because
It's in the Tullahoma Comprehensive Transportation Plan, and there's a map.
What is Cedar Lane considered?
Collector.
did we just change that?
Yeah, but if we say collector, that opens it up to a lot.
No. You can't change roadway classifications in the transportation plan. Those are based on engineering models, and it has to comply with TDOT. It's the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something you could look at, but as it reads now, if somebody were, I mean, there's the difference, it's again residential and non-residential mixing. So if somebody, a developer wanted to come in and do a new corporate headquarters for Mary Sponges, and then also have a phase of houses or townhomes beside it, that would be inconsistent with this policy.
Could they still request a PUD?
Yes, but then a planned unit development, we would have, because it's a rezoning, we review it against these policies.
So it'd still be
So this
no.
wouldn't support it.
How can we, I mean, I think, unless that's not something, but I mean, that's areas prime for that, and those are things that I think he left.
Could we change it to
That we're
collector?
trying, how can we write this to where we can allow that in that area?
You would just change
just
the
say?
roadway classifications. You wouldn't limit it to along urban principal arterial roadways. You could say along arterial and collector roadways. But now keep in mind that Kings Lane is a collector, Country Club, Short Springs is a collector.
So that's not going to fly. So,
That was part of the discussion that we had at the committee level.
yeah, so we can't do collector. I mean, could we specify it along principal arterial roadways and I don't want to say airport area. I don't know how to.
Who made the roadway classification map? I still am going back to that. You say it can't be changed, but I believe it could. But, I mean, who makes that and who makes that decision? Like, if we went to the state and said, okay, hey, TDOT, this has become more of a, arterial major thoroughfare here, can we change the classification?
There's engineering guidelines to go with it. I mean, there's text.
Well, I understand, but I mean, I'm saying that we could ask for that change rather than changing it in here.
It would be much easier to change it here than to change the entire transportation plan. Mr. Worsham, do you want to speak to this, please, sir?
Well, I don't think we're going to, we're going to ask TDOT to do a lot of things, but they've got their policies and they're going to adhere to their policies. They're not going to change their plans and policies to accommodate each town that wants to change.
Right.
So I think
These
we
are
need to
kind of
change it here. We're going to
standardized
change it,
engineering.
make it comply with what's already been done. If they change their policies and change our plan, then we can amend this. Be much easier to do.
Mr. Dean?
I was just going to say, if you look
Can you please come up to the microphone, please?
If you look at the transportation plan, Cedar's actually a minor arterial on the plan, as well as a couple of other, I think, I'm not great with the roads, Old Shelbyville Highway, I think, going out there. So if Cedar's kind of the big question, maybe add that, the minor arterials, and that's not a collector per, at least my looking at it.
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, you could actually name streets here instead of just using it
Yeah.
as a classification. Ignore Jackson.
I would
Say along Cedar Line, along Cedar, so we could just say that.
I mean, unless minor arterials are all kind of,
Well, Old Shelbyville Highway's shown as that.
is that
going
that
out.
would be Beechcraft? Was that the?
I think
Yeah,
that's
I would-
out there. And then, I guess the Cedar turned into West Side, so part of West Side going south, and then Clement, which comes from Carroll, right? That the one, so Clement, and then
We just named
Forest. So those are the ones that show on here. They're blue on your transportation map.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Yeah.
Mayor, you don't have the ability to project the transportation map on the screen.
No, I don't have any computer set up.
I mean, can we, is there a reason that we couldn't, so the areas where we're not going to ever have mixed use are collectors. I would think that Country Club would be a collector. That just makes sense based on what it looks like.
At this point, just for clarification, because I don't have the data in front of me, I would recommend that you just name the streets that you'd like to see mixed-use projects on.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make the motion that we say for 7.1.1.11
we add at the beginning, single project, and then mixed-use areas. That's hits what you talked about, right? Providing for the integration of residential and non-residential uses could be permitted in appropriate locations within the urban area along the urban principal arterial roadways as defined in the Tullahoma Comprehensive Transportation Plan and along Cedar Lane, period. And then continue with the rest of it.
What about Washington Street?
Is there a reason to not? So well, first off, we have a motion. Do we have a
It's up to
second?
the chair if he wants to keep addressing the.
Hang on. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Who seconded? He was still in the process of making.
I'm asking if we have a second. Okay. Motion dies. I'm sorry. Who
Well,
wanted to be recognized?
if you'd have let him finish the motion, I might have seconded it.
I thought he did. Or
Yeah, that was the end. I don't,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, we could amend it, or just let it die and then
We try again.
try again. But I don't want to just say minor arterial because I don't know what those are. Washington Street in my head, that's where the Budweiser, not Budweiser,
Yeah.
L&H. Is that a
Wisco.
corporate? I know just where, I don't know all of it, but where I have seen some of the interest in corporate type developments is in that upper Cedar Lane area where we've got the industrial park, where we have Ascend, where we do have room. I think there's plans for some different there's plans for things up there. That's the only reason I named it specifically. I just didn't want to.
I second the motion.
Okay.
I'm scared to just blanketly say minor arterial and then West Side Heights, which is over by Greg. Right. I mean, I'm okay with mixed use. I like those, but I know others don't, and they'll tan my hide.
We have a motion.
This is discussion time, so.
Yeah, go ahead. Ms. Cheney, you're recognized. I'm trying to make sure I follow the rules here.
Cedar Lane is kind of two different streets, really. There's the part that starts at Wilson Avenue and goes out to the the 41A, and then there's the part where the swimming pool is and West Side Drive that goes the other way. And it doesn't have any kind, it's just narrow as can be, and it's not appropriate for semi trucks and that sort of thing. If you're talking about putting commercial, is that what we're talking?
Like the target's
corporate,
like office, like
okay, just
white collar
corporate.
workers, like a,
So just cars. We're just talking about cars, not semis.
not industrial.
Okay, yeah, that was my problem, is that I did not think the traffic would be
We already-
appropriate there. So.
I'll give you an example. The vacant lot that two spaces down from DW, it's commercial, even though it's on Cedar Lane and it's a vacant lot. And then right next to it, you have residential. So, there is a lot of commercial and residential on Cedar Lane as it is. There just isn't any mixed-use developments, because we don't really have those in the city yet, that would be on the same lot, if you will. So what this would allow is, if somebody wanted to do some sort of very urbanized development, it would appropriate Cedar Lane like it was a major thoroughfare.
My thought is that you could put something in there, like from Wilson Avenue to 41A, Cedar Lane, that portion of Cedar Lane, and exclude the rest of it's residential, basically. So, except for the gas stations, and Tullahoma Drug on the corner there, it's. And
That lot that we own is commercial, and it's two spaces down from D.W. Wilson. It's in the, and that's interesting. I always thought it was residential, but it's not. There's commercial lots right there. They just aren't used commercially. Remember when the daycare, like down from
Yes,
Bel Air,
yes.
that it used to be a daycare, and I guess they
Used to
rezoned
be
it
a little
residential.
store there.
Yeah, it used to be a little store there. So the question
let's
is,
stay
do
on
we want to
scope.
see that, grow?
Come back, yeah.
All right.
Well, with the condition the road is in, I just don't see in that portion, that was the reason I wanted to get up and speak. So
Thank you, Ms.
I'm going
Chairman.
to sit down.
Sorry, I didn't mean to drag this out. My concern was just, I know that that's an area that we have been trying to target for corporate. That was my big concern, and I didn't want to, yeah. And we may not get any in the next 2 years, but.
For future growth, I agree with you, but the problem I've got is if you look at what we've got right now, and it's not just Cedar Lane, Washington Street, both South Washington and North Washington, loaded with this mixture of industrial, light industrial, and residential, and some commercial.
We're not going to change that, though. This
No,
is just
but
for
it's in
new.
violation.
No, it's not in violation anymore. This is speaking of new areas, correct?
It
Yeah,
doesn't.
so
It doesn't unless you change it so that it says new projects or something like that.
No, they don't, does it? Is that true?
It's future plan. It's not, existing is not,
Yeah.
we can decide, we as a board could decide that we want to turn, where Walmart is into residential, and we can plan that, but it's not going to happen. This is for where we want to be, not where we are now necessarily.
Well, I think it's both, because and I agree, it's an unachievable goal. But what Mary's tried to do, which I totally agree with, is try to eliminate nonconformances within the city by changing the land use map.
Can we just add the word new here then?
and that's-
New single projects?
Yeah.
And let's just eliminate that. There's no, so I'll make a motion to amend to say new single project mixed use areas.
And still leave Cedar Lane in.
Yeah.
Still Lane. Okay.
Well, I second the
But
amendment.
we get second, okay, so original motion,
I
second
second
motion.
it's an amendment.
Yeah, we'll do Mr. Berry and Mr. Combs. All right.
Close out the original one?
Well, we got to vote on the first, we got to vote on the amendment, and we'll go back. So, anyway, any other discussion on that? Let's vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment to add new to the original amendment? Aye? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, and then back to the original amendment of, so we got new mixed-use areas, and then adding Cedar Lane to the end of mixed-use projects.
New misuse.
New mixed-use projects.
New single projects is what you said?
New single
New single.
projects dash
Not
mixed
mixed
use
use,
area.
new single projects, all right.
Very specific.
All right. Would you read that to us?
Change it, remove mixed-use areas and change it to new single projects, providing for the integration of residential and non-residential uses could be permitted in appropriate locations within the urban area, along urban principal arterial roadways, and along Cedar Lane as defined in the Tullahoma Comp Plan.
New single project mixed use areas. So leave mixed use areas, just add new single project, prefix it with.
It wasn't a replacement.
Okay. New single project mixed-use areas.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
New single mixed-use project.
Nope.
Okay. Anyway, any more discussion on that motion? When the meeting gets caught up, we'll go. You ready? Okay. All right. I'll call a vote. All in favor of that amendment? Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion passes 7-0. All right. Moving on. I think that concludes 25.
Page 26, another time, on the new number 18, locate communities serving commercial developments The committee struck on major collector, and they only wanted it on the, again, the urban principal arterial streets. Locate community serving commercial developments on urban principal arterial streets according to the Tullahoma Comprehensive Transportation Plan on sites which allow for the clustering of activities and result in minimal negative impacts on adjacent properties or the transportation system.
Now, this is where I think Mr. Cutmer might have a point about the industrial or even L&H, because technically Washington is not, wouldn't be a major arterial. Also, going out our industrial park where A&R Glass is, out that way, you've a couple of manufacturing facilities that come in, and they are connected to 55 right there, or even 41 if you go on out and go to the right, out. I mean, we're looking kind of like even out Old Estill Springs Road. You think about that industrial land it's zoned industrial, used agricultural, but technically they wouldn't be just adjacent to a major arterial thoroughfare, because Old Estill Springs Road, and what is that road that A&R Glass is on? Who knows? Is that Washington too? Oh yeah, it is. Washington are not, those would be collectors, not made principal arterial. Am I wrong?
What is community serving? What does that define?
Community serving commercial development, that would be like a grocery store, a CVS, a gas station, primarily retail types of uses.
You have to think about that major principal arterial is just the major highways, 41A and 55.
Yeah, I feel like that really limits.
I think that's very limited.
Yeah.
If we're trying to bring in, what's your opinion?
I don't have an opinion on that.
But then it makes me nervous with collector, meaning places like Kings Lane too.
Yeah.
So, it's too wide of a gamut, and I don't know how to rephrase it. But I do think that we could. Maybe the community serving's okay. Maybe it's the region serving development. Region serving would be like what?
The mall.
Okay. That one I'm okay with it being principal arterials.
Yeah. Like a Costco, which we're not getting a Costco, but yeah.
Don't start that rumor.
Like a Sam's Club, that would be like a regional serving monster commercial, yeah.
That makes sense.
Right.
What's the Dollar General?
Community kind of serving.
Okay. I do think that's very narrow. And really, yeah. And it really, especially for 18. Also, there's an inconsistency with the spelling of the word principal there. So we should fix that.
Well, and something that it does is when you say we're only going to allow commercial development, community serving commercial development on those principal arterial streets, immediately what we're doing is we've just double, tripled the property prices on those, because then you're limited to only that area. And so when we are trying to lure in some of these places, they're looking at insane pricing. It just...
Under this road, you couldn't have built the Dollar General that was just built.
Yeah, and that is great for that community.
It is.
I would make a motion that we revert back to what it was.
I don't know, maybe you could, because that was Highway 41. Would Highway 41 be considered, or no, that'd be Old Highway 41, wouldn't it?
It's Old Tullahoma
Old Tullahoma Highway.
Yeah, it's on Grundy.
All right.
A motion that we revert back to what it was.
It's on West Lincoln, East Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yes, we can actually. Okay. All right. What time is it? Let's make it through this. All right. We got a motion to
revert.
It's a hard one for me. I don't know.
And we got a second from
Yeah, I'll second.
Second,
Can
Mr.
can we
Yes.
ask, can we get input from the committee as to why
Yeah, I would
they
like to
thought
know
that was
from the
necessary?
Yes.
Can we get the committee to answer as to why you thought that was necessary? Would y'all mind addressing why you thought that was necessary?
Mr. Dean, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we were concerned about large entities in some of these smaller areas. But in kind of looking back here, the original terminology was arterials, which would just be the minor and major arterials. So you're not adding places like the different collector streets to that. If you go back to the original language, it's probably not that major of a deal. This is my opinion. I'm one of six. So, but looking at that, I'm still got the transportation map up. Once again, we're back to Cedar and West Side and Old Shelbyville Highway and I don't know, a couple of other areas. Forest, where it kind of heads out towards the base. And
It said before major collector.
Pardon me?
It said major collector before.
It did say major collector. I think the collector part, I believe our group would have a problem with, but, you know, we're not making the final say here. Obviously, that's your call. We did designate urban principal. I think I could probably speak on behalf of the group and say we'd have no problem throwing the minor arterial in there. But you're talking a lot of streets if you start throwing all the collector streets in there for potentially this type of stuff. So,
But think about
That's my
that for the
opinion.
Dollar General. I don't think you would want to eliminate that, would you?
which Dollar General?
The one that's on
On East Lincoln.
East
Just
Lincoln.
built, just completed about a year ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could sit here and find little spots all day long. And I don't know, but if you open up every single collector road to the possibility,
I agree
what are you
with
doing
that.
there? So this was our thought process, was trying to have some kind of limitation.
It still has to be consistent with the area use map. So even if it is an arterial that's zoned residential, you can't put a market in there anyway.
Correct.
So I don't think that's necessary.
It would have to be zoned commercial as well as the land.
As well as.
As well as.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
Well, I don't disagree with you. We didn't study each collector road specifically, to your point, Mr. Comer. So in general, we believe the arterials were the places to try to, and once again, I think just going to some of the other discussion here, this is going forward. This is with the idea of going forward. So this isn't like, obviously, like you've mentioned the Washington Street and all the things that are on that and at various locations. Totally agree. Nothing's going to happen with the things that are already there. Maybe you just throw in future or new or something like that in front of some of these terms so that it's clear that you're not trying to, root out something that's already in existence. And I don't know if that's a conflict or not.
No, it's not. It's not needed. It's not, this entire plan is for, the only time you look at this plan is when you're proposing to do a project, something new.
So it's all considered new then?
Well, I agree when you're talking about some of the stuff that existed on Washington Street, but I don't agree when you're talking about the Dollar General store on East Lincoln Street. And you eliminate that too, and that was a year ago, that was a new project. And there might be one coming next year in another area similar to that.
Yeah, they could always apply for a variance. Kirk say that.
I do not believe that can. It has to be, you have to show.
The question is, if you designated it with nothing on a collector, could there be a variance for a new
No, it's not a
Dollar
variance.
General? It's not a variance issue?
No, variance is to design standard within the zoning ordinance. These are just policies that would be reviewed when a new project would come in for rezoning in conjunction with the map. So if a Dollar General wants to come on Short Springs Road, that's a collector.
Correct.
I finally was able to pull up the transportation map.
Okay.
But it's in a low-density residential area, so that, the map takes precedent.
I
It's the
think,
first thing you look at. So it's like, well, clearly, we're not supporting a commercial development on Short Springs Road because it's in a low-density residential designation.
I would like to open up to collector.
I think you have to tie it into something besides the type of road, because the type of road doesn't, the way they lay it out doesn't support what you're trying to do.
Well, I think the committee followed the type of road because that's kind of the way that it was defined and the way it was approached in the.
I understand.
Yeah.
Plan, yeah.
Yes, sir, we didn't
But
try
it was a
to,
lot more liberal than what they're trying to do.
Right, it was.
we weren't trying to do road per road per road per se, you know, as you added Cedar Lane, so. That it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dean. Okay. I mean, my comment here is basically, is like, do we like, I said, actually, my notes, I'll read my notes. It says, do we like Strodes? Do we like crossing the street? Do we like more traffic? Like, all that this does by limiting where we actually have markets and stuff like that to urban principal interior streets is make car trips more and longer. So, anyway, we do have a motion and a second to revert back and to say, locate community serving development on major collector and urban principal, but we're going to correct the spelling of principal, arterial streets according to the Tullahoma Comprehensive.
No, that urban principle was added, that's underlined, not
You just need major collector, right? Just need major collector on.
Well, it'd be arterial and major, arterial's still there.
Major collector.
Yeah, major collector and arterial, and I think that's
Major
appropriate.
collector and arterial streets,
Just put it back to the original language.
if you go back to the original.
Hang on, sorry, I know I made the motion. Does that say that if we do that and we take out the urban principle, does that mean we can't do community serving on North Jackson? Is that going to eliminate that? Okay, good, all right, good,
No,
let's do.
because it is still an
That's
arterial.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I would recommend leaving the, according to Tullahoma Comprehensive
Transportation plan, yeah, that gives, yeah, we need a point of reference.
Anyway, so that's the motion, and the second, who had the second? Was it
Marvin.
Mr. Sellers? Okay. Let me know when you're caught up, Nina.
Okay.
Okay. All right, any more discussion? All right, this is for the, I'll call a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Nay.
Is that, you're
Opposed.
Opposed, okay, so it's 6-1. And if we're done with this page, why don't we take a short recess, 5
I
minutes?
think it was 5-1, wasn't it?
Yeah,
There was no, there's not 7 people here.
oh, I'm sorry, 5-1. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Can we set a cutoff time of this meeting at some point, or, because I think many of us have a visitation to attend tonight for an alderman's wife who passed, so I think it would be respectful of him to allow people on this board to do so.
I agree.
Do we have a schedule? I mean, we've got to get this done today, right? To stay on schedule.
Right.
What's the schedule? I mean, what's the...
This was supposed to go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the first reading Monday, the 24th. It can certainly be continued. We can have another, I can do another legal ad for another special and just start pushing it back a month.
I mean, we're not even halfway through, so at this rate, I don't...
Let's just speed through. We're not speed through, but.
I don't see any reason why we should rush it. In fact, even if we had to push it back to the next meeting from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, I don't understand why that would be an issue.
It's not, I didn't make the schedule for this one.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, it's
No,
fine.
it's not an issue. I'm just saying that he asked the question, would this push it back? And I said, yeah, I would push it back.
Yeah, I don't think we have any procedure, so I mean, if you have a motion to, if we want to talk about when we want to end it.
My only thing would be, we do have people, there is a man on Old Estill Springs Road who has, every time it rains, he gets inches of water in his home, who's waiting for us to finish this so that we can do that. And if you extend this another 2 weeks, yeah, that's only 2 weeks here, but then that adds 2 weeks there, and you're adding an additional month onto that. And it just, and this is something that's my only thing is, this dude has been waiting. He has been to us so many
I don't
times.
understand the connection between this and that.
Because this needs to be done so that we can go through and do the city-initiated rezoning to fix his.
Do the rezoning.
All right.
We can't try to do the city
Did
initiated rezoning for the
the
50
Board of Mayor and
properties.
Aldermen decide not to rule on
We
that?
can't until this is done.
Why?
Because
it's
this
not
is the
legal.
land use map. It's not legal for us to do it until we've changed the land use map.
All right. So,
Well,
motion on where we want to end.
I don't know. We've had things for the last many years that were in conflict with the land use map that we did, and that was the biggest problem. And the reason we wanted to get the land use map updated is because we were having too many things that we were doing that were in conflict with it.
That's what we're trying to do here, though, is fix
I know.
that so that we can.
But if we've done it for the last
I'm not doing
many
anything
years.
that's not legal.
Okay, let's try to just get through it. Let's try to get through it.
Yeah, that would be-
Do we have to take a break? Because I would like to just keep going.
If you can get up, take a break,
We
take a break.
can keep
Yeah,
going.
keep going.
If you gotta go, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Mary, back to you, page 27.
Page 22 is just, or not 22, page
27.
27, policy number 22. It was just that there were previous kind of site criteria that would be appropriate for industrial uses laid out in 7.1.1.1.20 that were captured in all the other sub-areas of industrial uses that wasn't captured in 22. So they just wanted to make that consistent. Just referring back to the site criteria for large industrial uses. Just, it's cross-referencing.
All right.
Any questions on that one? Okay, moving along. 7.1.1.3 and 7.1.1.1.32. Those are both stricken. It says, encourage where appropriate the relocation of scattered manufacturing establishments which are incompatible with surrounding areas within areas designated as appropriate for industrial uses. That's inconsistent with the land use map. Again, that's saying basically demolished existing manufacturing areas that aren't in industrial
But it
parks
says
and move
encourage.
them.
It doesn't say move them, it says encourage. What's wrong with that?
It says encourage where appropriate the relocation of scattered manufacturing establishments.
To me, that says we move in the future to trying to have all of our industries in industrial parks, and I don't think that's a bad objective. I mean, you can't do it completely, but it's not a bad objective to have, and try to do it, encourage it.
I don't think that kind of incentive is necessarily reasonable to encourage in the next 2 years. It's not going to. I don't think we're making any positive ground to that in 2 years.
Well, we probably won't, but I still don't think it's a bad thing to try to have as an objective to move towards having our industries in industrial parks. That would be a well-organized city if you had that accomplished.
We just don't have a large enough industrial park to do that, though, I think is another point. But I think to Mr. Schwer's point, with it just being a stopgap, maybe that's something they can address in the future plan.
And the same thing with the next one on technology development areas. What's wrong with technology development?
It says, identify areas for technology development and adopt a comprehensive development plan that will ensure an adequate supply of land for technology uses with adequate urban services. Design standards shall be applied to protect surrounding development and enhance the area's natural beauty. TAEDC already has a comprehensive economic plan.
Well, right, it does that. Well, why not? Maybe you want to reference that, but I still think both of those things are good objectives.
Do you want to make a motion to keep them in, or?
Well, I don't think it's good. As somebody said, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference either way. But I just don't understand striking something out that's a good objective, and I just don't understand the reason for striking it out.
It doesn't hurt anything if you leave it in there, does it? It's not contradictory?
No, it's not contradictory.
Somebody wants to do it, make a motion.
Did you make a motion, Bill?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion on the floor, second. Discussion. Do we want to ask Mr. Dean what the thinking, the thought process behind this is?
I mean, I basically answered it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problem.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion 6-0. All right. That's keeping 31 and 32.
Hope you skip 35.
And then 35, apply design standards to all development within designated technology development areas to ensure compatibility between land use types. So that's direct. So apply design standards, so that would be directing me as planning director to create design standards for industrial parks that they would have to follow within the zoning ordinance.
Let's leave that out, because you're not going to do that in the next 2 years. It'd just be a waste.
Page 29, page 30, 31, numbering. On page 33, objective 7.3.1.246, viable land outside the city shall be reviewed as provided for in public chapter 1101 legislature for future annexation and acquisition to ensure that appropriate and suitable properties is available to meet the current need for commerce and industry. The annexation law has changed since 2011, so we can now no longer annex against people.
I think that should be eliminated.
Nothing. Another PERD transportation. We added the PERD City of Tullahoma transportation plan, multiple areas. Again, that's just cleaning it up. It really should be stated like that. We remove shall to be should because this is not a regulatory document.
What was the comment while we're talking about wording? On 731315, very top of page 35, we struck out audit and replaced it with review.
35.
3.15, page 35 at the top, first one.
Yeah.
Conduct a management audit. Just they felt like audit wasn't the appropriate word, but that's more kind of fiscally based.
Okay.
That a review would capture effectiveness in city government. It would capture more elements than just a quote-unquote audit. Page 39.
Skip 38.
I'm sorry, I didn't think there was anything on 38. Oh, land use objective, they took out encourage mixed uses.
Do you want me to comment on that?
You can comment on anything you want, sir.
Mixed use is positive return on investment. If we want sustainable growth and less taxpayer burden, future mixed development must be encouraged. I disagree with removing it.
I do too, but I say let's just keep it removed, and then what happens, happens.
Okay.
there's names on here, so everybody will know who did it.
That's my point.
It doesn't say deny mixed use, you're just not encouraging it.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't really matter.
power forward. There's so many misspellings in this.
I think that might have been the bulk of it.
Page 39, and we got the same
Page 39.
locate higher density residential development within the urban area, urban principle.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's
Higher density residential development, so that would be
on purpose.
okay.
townhomes and/or apartments.
Same comment.
So only put
Encouraging
apartments
traffic,
on.
encouraging sprawl, encouraging high taxes.
So apartments can, this is saying apartments can only go on Jackson Street and
Yeah.
where?
And if you look at the land use map, there's not that many places in town where they're allowed.
Correct.
What roads would this allow it on? Apartments, higher density,
Urban principle.
which would be Jackson Street
At 55.
and 55. So, like, didn't we,
Urban principle. So this would be eligible for rezonings. Again, people that have their existing zoning, or they have their existing zoning and existing entitlements. According to the transportation plan, urban principal arterials are North and South Jackson, Carroll, and Wilson.
Yeah, that's what I said a while ago. It's 55 and 41A. That's it.
Yeah.
I believe collector should be added back, and I want to make a motion to add a collector back to that.
We have a second.
I'll second that. Is there a difference between, I've seen in here it said major collector. Is there a difference between major collector and collector?
The transportation map has, you have urban principal arterial, then urban minor arterial, then urban collector.
Yeah, I don't think there's a
So there's
difference in
no-
collector.
Okay.
I think that was on purpose based on the feedback that was received as to why 2040 failed. I don't think that people want high-density residential development, and the rest of this is in conjunction with that, saying, you know, we want to focus those onto major thoroughfares so that they're not going through connector roadways and putting a taxpayer burden on having to fix those roads due to more traffic because of more development. I agree that the changes they made are appropriate.
Well,
And-
you look at the land use map, and the areas that are designated higher density now are not on those arterial roads.
When we say high density, are we just talking about, we're not saying, are we saying apartments, or are we just saying defining high density as it's more than the average?
No, high density by definition will be townhomes, apartments, or mobile home parks.
So you can't put townhomes, apartments, duplexes, if this stays anywhere but Jackson, 55, which is Carroll, and Wilson?
Is a duplex considered,
Let me answer. I didn't say duplex.
Sorry.
Duplex is medium density residential.
But townhome.
Townhome is high density.
Yeah, but this includes that.
I know.
Let Mary
Let me
finish,
answer
please.
this question, because then it's getting, so you still have the land use designation map, and you still have all the existing zoning, so there's a lot of property that are currently zoned for R3 or R4, which is your high-density designations. So this is saying when and if somebody were to come in to rezone property, we would look at the map first, and then we start looking at the policy directions.
But if I had an R1 and I wanted to put, how many townhomes is that, just townhome, like, it just doesn't matter, period. I couldn't do
R1,
R.
you can't do townhomes in R1.
Right, so I'm saying if I had an R1 and I need an R3 to do townhomes, and even though I wanted to put only 2 townhomes on there, I couldn't do that. I couldn't get that rezone.
Well, what this is, I'm trying to think of a scenario now. What this is saying is that if there was a vacant piece of property on, say, Rock Creek Road, that's currently zoned high-density residential, and somebody were to come in and say it's zoned R1, somebody came in to rezone it to R3 to do an apartment complex there, the land use designation would find it appropriate. However, Rock Creek Road is classified as a local, so this policy statement would not encourage it, i.e., it wouldn't be appropriate to have that high of a density and that much traffic on a local road.
Rock Creek Road's a local
So
road.
these, again, you got to remember the plan map and all those policies
Right, I'm with
have to
you.
work together.
Right, I'm with you
So
there.
one doesn't trump the other necessarily.
Right, I'm with you there. I'm just trying to work
Yeah.
out in my head in that
And
scenario.
you're
if-
saying typically higher density developments, apartments, townhomes, large developments for high intensity uses should be located on Jackson, South Jackson, North Jackson, 55 and Wilson.
That's what this is saying.
Yes. it's
Right,
probably-
so what I'm trying to get at is, if, I know that we, yeah, it's, to take your exact same scenario, on Rock Creek Road, I wouldn't want a complex with 100 apartments there, right? But if I had a piece of property I wanted to put 2 townhomes on, this would not allow me to do that, because it's high density, even though it's not high
It
density.
wouldn't support that finding,
Right,
because again, this isn't law at all.
right, I get that, but
Right.
that's when I'm
That would be
saying we
something that
can't do
You would have to
it.
evaluate.
You would have to, this would come back to us and say,
Right.
this
I would write a
says,
staff report say, these policies support this rezoning, these ones don't. You need to weigh them out.
right,
There's zero intersection between the light blue residential high-density multifamily zone on the land use map and the urban, or the whatever principal arterials.
I mean,
So there's an inconsistency there.
it's just kind of asinine to me. But is there a way to put maybe a,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
maybe to put a quantity, right? Instead of just blanketly saying high density, say, I don't know, I hate to even just arbitrarily pick a number.
So that's where I was getting ready to head out. My question was going to be, I think the main driver behind this is that you don't put 100 homes on a street that can only has 2 small lanes on it. I think that goes back to what we talked about before about the, what's the terminology about how much traffic is, if you wanted to put 100 homes in there, that the roads can't handle the density of traffic. What is that called?
Roadway capacity?
Yeah, I think that would also fall into play. Am I wrong, Mary, that would
Yes, that would
also
fall into
restrict
play,
what you could do?
Correct.
2 townhomes, but you can't do 100 apartments, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but that's not what it says.
Right, that's what he's saying. Yeah.
Again, I was asking, I think it's along the same lines as you, is it really should be density of numbers, not.
Well, if you look at the way it's stated right now, if you look at point 12 here, it says locate low-density residential. That's R1. If you look at 13, it says locate higher density. Then that's referring to higher than low density, and so that means it's everything except R1.
Right, that's what we're all saying. I think we're all saying what you're saying is.
So now
this
everything
is kinda
except
silly.
R1 can only be on arterial roads.
Yeah, so now those apartments that maybe we want to build on Cedar Lane,
Yeah.
you couldn't do now because
The ones we
of this.
just did on, I don't know what the name of the road is, but it's just after you come under that underpass under the railroad over there on
That's Washington Street.
yeah, Washington Street, whatever that road that goes off of there. We couldn't have done that. We just did. We allowed Harton family to build townhomes there.
That actually
That
died, but
project
yeah.
didn't have.
That died, and it's already
That
zoned.
didn't get approved.
Didn't get approved by who?
It didn't make it to the Board of Mayor and Alderman. So they only have R2 zoning there.
Yeah.
They don't have what?
They didn't, that rezoning didn't get approved.
That was done in our,
Who killed it?
that was done in our
They pulled it.
purgatory of between the 2 plans.
So can we, getting kind of back to this, I
But
think
it's
we're all on the same page that
It's
this.
on the medium density, I think, on the land use map that's part of this plan that you got right before you there.
Right.
That's already R2.
That property is currently zoned R2, so that's why we made it medium-density residential on the land use map.
Yeah. So can we maybe say
But
something?
it's in violation to this statement
Like-
right here.
Let's refocus here. We have a motion right now
Do we have a motion?
from Mr. Yes, we do.
Did he?
From Mr.
Yeah.
Hall.
To add it back.
And,
you had-
and
Daniel,
I believe Daniel seconded it,
second,
to add,
collector,
to add urban, or to add collector into that.
back into the,
Yeah.
Would it be taking out urban pencil?
I think that's
that wasn't on
appropriate.
his motion.
Well,
Leave and improve principle.
I would also just add, because it doesn't have, I was looking at our transportation plan, basically just include the urban principal, urban minor, arterial, and urban collector.
It does, it did originally, it just said arterial roads, so that
Yeah.
includes both.
So,
Well, it said principal, so that's,
Yeah, but if you take principal out and just say
Yeah.
arterial roads, then it's
Okay.
including both the minor and the principal.
Okay, so the motion is, my understanding of it is to collector, to keep collector and remove urban principal, so it reads collector and arterial roads. Is that correct?
yeah.
Seconded by Barry?
Leaving the per the Tullahoma.
Yes.
Comprehensive plan. Yeah, and I did second that.
And you're still going to leave the change shall to should, you're going to leave that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, I don't know why we need to specify the terrain there. It doesn't specify anywhere else, but
Right, I mean, that's a regulatory language, shouldn't be in the plan. That's why it was struck.
okay.
you're not really minimizing where you're putting your higher density residential development though, and I think that that's going to upset a lot of people. a lot of
Doesn't that go
citizens.
off the land use plan, though?
That's what I was going to ask the question. So what's the first level of control on the development plan going forward? It's the land use map, right, first?
Correct.
Then after that, it would come to this
Then you start
next.
looking at the policies.
Is that right?
Again, they have to all work together, but the main thing you first look at is the map,
Okay.
because it has to be compatible with the map.
I want to
because it has
ask again from the committee, do you all agree that if the land use map goes in, that it protects some of the protection that we're talking about, that we could put these back in, not limit the street types, that we depend on the land use map to control the growth?
Can you come up to, I'm sorry, we got to collect all this on the record.
I was going to use an example. If you look at the land use map, or excuse me, the transportation plan, Marbury is a good example. It's considered a collector street. So if you put that back in as a collector street, how many apartments are you going to build on Marbury?
Yeah.
Now, assuming it's all, low residential, which it may be,
It is.
then, and if that's the deciding factor, the area use map, then maybe it's a non-issue. That would be the only concern, is if you've got some areas that are, maybe considered not low residential, and, then I guess it's just a call for the city to make at that point of what the density is going to be that you're going to allow. So,
Well, another qualifier will be, say Marbury happened to be. Another qualifier would be, can the road support whatever?
exactly.
And that would be a negative. If it can't, that would be a negative on our thing, right? So that's an additional layer.
That's where I was trying to get to. I think I'm concerned about throwing high density in too many places and not having protections.
Right.
Because of the road limitation, because of land use map, I think that keeps from over density in areas that's going to just cause traffic to be terrible.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Does that in sync with what your understanding is of the land use? Mary, I'm just asking. Yeah. Okay.
Well, Mary, using that example on Marbury Road, wouldn't you have to rezone that in order to do it?
Yes.
There's your protection right there.
Yes. Exactly.
Rezoning wouldn't
So
be
if somebody
consistent.
has a vacant piece of property on Marbury Road, and they want to rezone it to do apartments, they would have to rezone it to R3. We would look at the map saying, okay, it's low-density residential. We go back to the plan on page 15.
That map is behind you.
Let me finish, please. Low-density residential isn't compatible with the R3 zoning district, so that would be a major strike. Then you would look further to policy statements.
Okay, all right, I'm going to call a vote on this. All in favor of the amendment to add back in collector and remove urban principal from that, with the rest of the changes maintained? Aye? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
All right, 5-1. All right. All right, moving on, Mary. Thank you for your patience.
Moving on, not seeing anything.
Okay, this is actually where 15 is where I found that mobile home parks should be considered for medium density.
What page is, where?
On 39. I found my note. We're about to.
Oh,
But yeah, it says it should be considered for medium density, so there's an inconsistency there, but I think that we've had enough discussion on that I'm okay with that.
mobile parks should be considered for medium density multifamily residential. No, I mean, that's not saying R2.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with it based on the
I mean,
previous
the zoning
discussion.
controls it regardless, so. Okay, flipping through. Nothing. That might have been, page 54 and 55. Within this plan, the existing 2011 comprehensive plan, there isn't really any much guidance regarding roadway improvements. And you might not know, but the Board of Mayor and Aldermen review road projects every year based on the annual budget. So they look at what sidewalks they want to fix and/or install, what roads, what intersections, on an annual basis. So it was thought appropriate that we take some of the list of the identified roadway improvements, intersection improvements, shoulder improvements, and bicycle and pedestrian improvements from the data that was collected and public input from the 2040 plan and insert it into this document to, again, provide some guidance for the Planning Commission and/or elected officials over this 2-year period when budget time comes to fund specific projects. It's the simplest way I know how to explain it.
Are these data-driven?
Yes, this is data-driven, as well as, these are actually, a lot of these projects are already kind of in process.
Yeah, I know.
Like they've already gone through the planning stages, or they're already going through the engineering stages, or they've already been just
Funded.
talked about for a number of years.
Some of them, like Cedar Lane sidewalks, have been
I've
funded.
got 3 things here I'd like to add to that list. I'd like to discuss those.
Make a motion, Bill.
I will, but I need to
Okay.
say what I'm going to say first, and then I'll end it with a motion. I think we've got 3 areas that are pretty bad road situations in Tullahoma that are not in the current transportation plan, and they're not in this list right here. One of them is on North Jackson Street, on the where all the shopping centers are. On the east side, we've got, I think, real good connectivity that takes traffic off of Jackson Street. And that's Atlantic Street, provides a rear entrance into all of those shopping centers there. The other thing is, when they added the Publix store there, they made an entrance into that next shopping center there. So that gives another path of connectivity without going out on Jackson Street. So you got Atlantic Street, and you've got that internal connection, which is in my opinion, very good. You can go all up and down there to all those various stores and not get back on Jackson Street. On the other side, that's not true, not even close to true. There is no street that goes behind there. That would be ideal, but expensive, to have a street that ran like Atlantic Street on the other side to provide rear entrance into those shopping centers. The other thing would be to provide places like by Publix there to provide internal interconnectivity between those shopping areas. The whole objective is to get traffic off of Jackson Street, and from people who are doing their shopping up and down North Jackson, they don't have to continually get out into Jackson Street, many times making left turns, which is also a bad thing. And there's been numerous traffic accidents on North Jackson recently, caused by people making those left turns, and primarily caused by that. And I think we need to add something on there to at least do a study to try to provide more connectivity on the west side shopping centers. That's my first proposal. The second one is to Kings Lane. There is one in there right now to do something about the intersection at Kings Lane and Country Club Drive. I wholeheartedly agree with that. My personal idea is a traffic circle would be good there. But that is a bad intersection with no left-hand turn lanes, and a traffic circle, of course, eliminates left turns altogether.
Are you talking about Kings Lane and Country Club?
Kings Lane and Country Club.
Yeah, it's on there.
I said it's on there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I said.
I'm sorry.
But what's not on there relative to Kings Lane is Kings Lane is a very high traffic road.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very narrow, no sidewalks, and no shoulders. And there's a deep ditch on that road that comes right up next to the road. And that road badly needs sidewalks and shoulders.
Yeah. We do have a funded project for sidewalks on Kings Lane. I don't think it includes shoulder installation, though, so you could certainly add that
Yeah.
to this project.
That's my second one. My third one. What?
It's the sidewalks is on 7.9.1.6.1.
Okay, but not the shoulder.
Right. I added it, if you get a second, I added it to the shoulder list.
Okay, the other thing is there's a letter in there from Dr. Bill Sanders that I think is a very good letter. And it talks about connectivity between Country Club Drive, and also Short Springs Road over to the old Manchester Highway, or hopefully over to the new Manchester Highway. I lived on Country Club Drive for 37 years over by the Country Club, and I felt for many, many years that it was bad that you got all that residential area out in that area, and to get over to Highway 55, you got to go into Tullahoma and then back. So all flow goes into Tullahoma and then back out. Now, I'm not in favor of going through those subdivisions like everybody thinks we shouldn't. I agree with that. But there's a couple, but if we'd done it back when I was pushing to do it, back in 1963 and 4, that was vacant. It would have been easy to put one through there, but it didn't happen. Now we're about to lose the two slight opportunities that's still there. One of them is the one Dr. Sanders has suggested, and that's the one that would go through where the Frisbee Range is now.
Right.
And the other one is is out beyond that a good ways, out past Macon Manor. There is still showing on the map a vacant area that goes through there that could provide a way through there. And I think that there should be a study done to provide a way to provide that connectivity. Look at all the development that has taken place since the period of time I'm talking about back in the 60s, and all the people that are out there now. And it was bad then, and it's more than bad now to not have that connectivity over to there. Another possibility would be, and this is partially in there, to improve Carter Blake Road. And improving the Carter Blake Road thing is just to straighten it out like we did over at the Voca Riley Creek Road thing recently, to make it come in there at a 90-degree angle rather than the odd angle that it comes in there now, which I totally agree with. But another alternative would be to improve Carter Blake Road. But anyway, my motion is to, in the first two cases, in the first and third case I mentioned, to do a study to find a way to improve the connectivity on the west side of North Jackson Street between those shopping centers. The other is provide connectivity from Short Springs Road over to either the old Manchester Highway or the new Manchester Highway. If you go to the old Manchester Highway, you'd still have to go over to Cobb to get through to the new Manchester Highway, but that would be better than what we got now. But anyway, that's my motion.
Madam motion for Mr. Comer?
Can we repeat that?
What was number 2 as well?
It was to put that shoulder on
Sidewalks and shoulders on Kings Lane?
Kings Lane.
So sidewalks and shoulders.
And do a study to find a way to improve connectivity to the shops on the west side of North Jackson Street.
Right.
And add connectivity on Short Springs Road to Highway 55, New Manchester or Old Manchester.
That Carter Blake,
Carter Blake, I mentioned 3 possible alternatives, and the study would look at those 3 alternatives and decide what we wanted to do. But one alternative is the Frisbee course. The other one is that place on down there that's just past, I guess, or on one side of where Dr.
I think it's between Blantonwood and Lake.
Can we just say a
yeah.
study to look at improving connectivity between
Doesn't be
exits?
Country Club or Short Springs.
Yeah.
Okay, Bill, say Country Club or Short Springs. Just look at connectivity between those and Old Manchester Highway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Old Manchester.
I'll second. Vote. No discussion? Anybody have discussion?
No, I mean, I definitely agree with the Publix thing, although I do wish they used the right color paint to paint the road.
I agreed with the first point, but I mean, I don't know that I agree with the rest of it.
Mr. Grissel, you're recognized.
Yeah, would there be any way that we could take this and consider these as part of the comprehensive plan development that we're going to work on and propose? Because I don't think that they allow, that there's any provisions in there that's going to allow us to even go at this in the next 2 years. And so if this would be something that we could take back and make sure that it's worked out and worked through on the new plan, that would just be a recommendation that I would have.
Bill, I'm going to be honest. As a board member for the next year and a half, I don't think that I would say, let's go ahead and commence one of these studies. So I do tend to, at this point, right, I would wait until the next one, but just being honest, at this juncture, I seconded it just so we could vote. And I mean, it doesn't hurt anything to be in here. Well, so that was the only reason. But I'm being honest.
I think they're good points.
Let's spend the money to do it right now.
I think they're good points, but I don't think there's anything that's going to allow us to even remotely address it within the next year and a half. So,
well, but if you did a study to at least refine it down to.
Studies cost money.
That study's going to cost tens of thousands. That study's going to cost a lot of money. But there's no hurt. I mean, to me, I second it because there's no hurt in putting it in there.
Okay.
We'll decide later. That's why
The problem I've got is we've kicked this can down the road since 1960. 4 or 5.
I'm with you. I seconded it, to put it in here. So I'm with you there.
Bill, besides the point, these are just priorities. There's nothing to stop us from, as a board,
Doing it.
making that request outside this plan.
Yeah.
If we want to, to put that on the agenda sometime. Anyway.
Well, I just hate these are 3 things that I think really need to be done to improve the transportation plan of this city, and not only the city, but the surrounding area. And it keeps getting kicked down the road.
I'm with you, and I second to put it in there, but I'm going to have to find $1 million for SROs here.
All right. Any other discussion on this matter to add in this stuff? I'll call a vote. All in favor of Mr. Comer's motion to add in the favor? Vote now. Aye? Aye. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed?
Aye.
Nay. So that passes 4-2.
No. What's happening?
It passed 5-1 to add those in there. Or
Okay,
4
your hand went up, I didn't
4-2.
know.
4-2.
To add them to the, if it's in order of priority, I guess they go at the bottom, but.
I do have one to add on bicycle pedestrian and improvement priorities, and this is something that we can address because we have ARPA money, to finish the connection from, there's on Clement Drive, we're lacking, the sidewalk stops at a juncture there, and so you've got kids walking on a ditch. And there's really nothing in this plan at all that addresses southwest side of town at all. But one thing that I think that we can, and we do have funds in ARPA, is the Clement Drive, and I know that it came up, but I can't remember if we specifically, it was in there at one time, but I'd like to finish the connection from Clement Drive to, is that West Side Drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was an ARPA-funded project, but it might have gotten pulled.
Okay. So again, a motion to improve the sidewalk along Clement Drive.
To complete the sidewalk. From Clement Drive to West Side Drive.
Second from Mr. Hall.
Second, yes.
Okay. I will add, I was shocked, maybe 2019 or something like that, I was out that way and realized that there was no sidewalk across that bridge.
I clean up trash there, and it's bad.
But anyway, any discussion on this? Okay, all right, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor of the Clement Drive motion? Aye. Opposed? All right, that's 6-0. Barry.
Trying to move swiftly. Page 58, policy 15, encourage the use of existing rights-of-way for locating utilities. They added without disturbing existing pavement. There's a concern about when there are utility cuts done by TUA or other utilities, and they do the road patching that creates bumps.
Yeah, I agree with that. Leave that there.
Okay. So none, that was it. That was it. And then, saying that, do you want to accept the 2 changes, or not accept, but incorporate also the 2 proposed changes from the Community Plan Development Committee, being the kind of purpose statement added to the executive summary, as well as revising the language of Economic Development Goal 7.1.6 about building on local skills, expertise, facilities, equipments for AEDC.
I move we adopt that one, changing that. That was in response to Beverly Lee's letter pertaining to the Arnold Heritage and Innovation center that's been worked.
Is that the 716?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. It's at the back.
I move that we add that.
Second.
Well, I mean, it's already added, so.
Well, it's not, it's just a
It's just an addendum.
recommended change.
Where is it at?
7.1.6, is that right now?
Yeah.
7.1.6. Right.
Is the motion to adopt the changes in the community development proposed changes?
In the
Yeah.
7.1.6 specifically, right?
Just that. What about the first statement?
And the statement.
It's Bill's motion.
7.1.6.
It wasn't in the motion.
Right, I didn't think so.
716.
I just want to make sure we understood. At 7.1.6. Okay. Discussion on, do we have a,
I don't have a second.
A second.
Second. For what?
Or go ahead, take it, Andy.
Yep, sorry.
all right. Discussion. All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, add.
I'll motion to accept the statement of purpose for revision of the 2011 plan.
All right.
Second.
Executive summary.
Got a motion in a second?
To accept the executive summary?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Motion from Mr. Berry, second from Ms. Almacher. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's all from 6 to 0.
Okay. Then, did you want to incorporate any of the other, all the public comments that were received, any of those? We haven't, I think we've already probably discussed them, but I just wanted to draw attention to that. So was everything captured that anybody wanted to add based on the public comments?
I mean, I think there's a lot in here, but that was the question at the beginning, and I disagree with the board's directives were to the CPDC, right? Not the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission could make recommendations to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen if we wanted, but that's not a battle that I want to have. And so we were kind of told at the beginning of the meeting, don't do it, not by you, but so with that statement, yeah, there's a bunch of great stuff in there, but
I think that'll be carried forward to your all's future product production, right?
yeah. There is one on page 71 in here. This was a comment. It says, although the issue was addressed previously on page 14 from a transportation perspective, maybe we add in there, either strike that or say, although the issue was addressed previously on page 14 of the Think Tullahoma 2040 plan.
Daniel, where are you at?
Page 71.
I don't have page numbers on my
This page?
Yep.
Page 70.
Appendix C.
Appendix C.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under the commutation patterns. So either strike that or add.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
There's no previous page.
Yeah, that would have been the 14 of that Tullahoma 2040 plan,
So
so.
either strike that or add of the Think Tullahoma 2040
Okay.
plan, which is the preference.
I think just strike it.
The 2040 plan's not around anymore,
Right,
is it?
so, okay, I'll make a motion that we strike from although
Yeah.
to, just strike the whole
just a
thing.
header.
Just strike it all.
Paragraph. Yeah. Second.
Commutation pattern.
Just delete it.
Oh, yeah, I see now. Okay. We got Barry and Almacher. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's 6 to 0.
And then the only other thing I'd like for you to look at is, are there any changes to the actual future land use map? You were all provided a copy.
Yeah.
You don't have to make changes, I just want to make sure we cover it.
My only question, and you've already, I think, answered this will address our East Deckard problem,
Yes, that will enable a lot of those 50 properties to be able to be rezoned.
Okay. I feel like we're just slapping lipstick on a pig here, but that's the only thing that I really wanted to accomplish out of this was get those people taken care of. And if this does that, then, okay.
I'd like to make a statement concerning that map. I've been on the Planning Commission now about 7 years, and throughout that 7 years, we've had numerous problems with the inconsistency between the zoning laws and the land use map. And it's caused me great concern over a period of time because of that. So when we started this comprehensive plan thing, that was really my number one objective of the plan, to get rid of that. And the plan, my main objection to the 2040 plan that was done by the consultants is it really didn't do that. And that was one of my main objectives in the very beginning, is to accomplish that. So I'd just like to say that I appreciate the committee that's worked on this, Mr. Dean and the rest, the work that they did in making that plan consistent in order to get to the point to where we can take about 50 more properties and rezone them and get to a point that we can eliminate these inconsistencies that we have. So the original plan did not satisfy my objective on that. I think we're there now, Mr. Dean, and I appreciate the work that y'all did in that direction.
Mary had the expertise.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but this is basically the 2040 land use map.
This what?
This is the 2040 land use map for the most part. So when we went through the 2040 planning process, we tried to recognize the existing development pattern and make sure that the land use map...
I know, but it didn't correlate it to, it correlated it to all of those place types.
Yeah.
And not to our zoning.
Okay.
Now what has been done is
Right.
it's correlated to our zoning.
Correct.
And that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Good.
No comments on the map? All right, with that, we have to make, I guess we need to make pushes forward.
Well, there's a resolution,
Yeah, you can just sign that.
and that, so
Make a motion to adopt the resolution, send it to the board with a favorable recommendation. Right? Is that what we need?
proposed changes.
With the proposed changes.
Second.
Any other discussion? Last chance. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. With that, we are at the end of our agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.